Welcome to the Gifts from the Edge podcast, where you are about to meet parents and professionals, educators and entrepreneurs who have taken the path less traveled, and by doing that, have made all the difference. Now it's time to step out of the ordinary. Here's your host, Andrew Lord.
Hello everyone and welcome back to The Edge. Andrew Lord here with you, and today I'm excited to be introducing Maura Luxford, who is the author of the book that I've just finished reading and I think that you all need to read as well, and that is The Ride for a Cure origin story. It's a gripping tale of loss, grief, love, and the inspiring life of her daughter Hannah, whose journey is the real inspiration behind Ride for a Cure. Now, let me introduce Maura. She has grown up in a large family of 9 kids. Much of her primary education was by correspondence in the 60s and 70s with her mum as a teacher. I know a lot of you guys listening to this are homeschoolers, so you will definitely relate to that one. Now, in the late 70s, Maura managed to get kicked out of one of the worst high schools in the state and finished year 10 droving out the back of Burke with her dad and 1,400 head of cattle. Now, despite that, she went on to graduate from university 20 years later with a degree in social sciences. And since then, she's had a long career in community development and education, which is where we've crossed paths. But I had no idea of the depth and the amazing stories that she has been a part of. And when I found these out, I thought, I've got to get her on here, got to get her on Gifts from the Edge and share her wisdom and her story with all of you. So, Maura, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us on Gifts from the Edge.
My pleasure, and thanks for the invitation, Andrew.
All righty. So let's go back to the story of Hannah and what was going on in Hannah's life before her world kind of came crashing down. You just paint a picture for us. How old was she? What was she up to? Those sorts of things.
Yep. So she had finished high school. She was a livestock science student at the University of New England, living in Armidale, and really dynamic, loved study, absolute science mad, and was very clever. Barely studied in a HSC and still managed to get an 86. So, and she often posed the thing, I wonder what I would have got if I had have really tried. She was much more interested in riding horses and training horses, but she was aspirational with her study and did want to get into uni, but well and surely got enough to get into livestock science, which was what she wanted. And during that year, and Han was always very careful about her, caring for her skin and, wore sunscreen, wore hats because we grew up in the bush. However, she did have one weekend when she came home from uni, and we were out mustering cattle on our horses all day, and that evening tied the horses up, put the horses away, and I was giving her a facial and rubbing some moisturizer, and I felt this little lump under her left ear, and just inquired. I said, hey, that's new. What's going on here? And she said, oh, it's nothing, Mum. I saw the doctor at uni. So she saw, and in fact, over a 6-month period, had seen 2 doctors who both said, watch it. And she'd had to see the doctors because to get an extension on an assignment at uni, you had to have a doctor's certificate. So, right. And she would, most weekends would be away at a rodeo or a camp draft with the horses. So was often needing an extension on an assignment. So she'd go and see the GP to get the extension. It wasn't ever because she was actually ill. Anyway, but 2 times out of that 6-month period, she did ask them to have it, check this spot out. And when I asked her the question, was it itchy? And she said, yes, it is. So I actually booked her into the skin cancer doctor in Kempsey, Dr. Carmel Shanahan, and said, next time you're home, I'll have an appointment ready for you with Carmel. And that's how it all started. And it was just an innocuous little freckle. It wasn't anything that was unusual. It was had a couple of colours in it, and it was itchy. So and it was a new spot. So I didn't know much about skin cancer, but I did know none of those were great signs. But at no point did I think it was catastrophic. I thought it was simply, it was sun damage and it'd get cut out. I didn't think that it could lead to a really serious diagnosis, which it did. It was malignant melanoma grade 4, stage 4, which is a significant diagnosis. And in a young person, Han had the biopsy one day in Kempsey, and then we were pretty much just told to be at the clinic the next morning, received a phone call at 7 a.m. at home from the doctor saying, come to the clinic, cancel everything. And then the next day we're in Sydney,
Wow.
so it was really
fast.
They 100%, they took it incredibly seriously. And just that was the point where our lives definitely were turned upside down, because we were a family that didn't get sick. We broke a few bones or strained a muscle in horse accidents, but that was it. We weren't a family that had any dis-ease or illness, really. So this was a significant, absolutely significant. And the thing about being a family and living in a regional area, rural area, in the mid-north coast at Kempsey, it was just extraordinary because everything was so disjointed. It was Sydney, Sydney-based everything, because of the seriousness of the diagnosis, that all of the medical treatment we needed was in Sydney, but it was really disparate. It was all over the place. Newtown, like there's about 4 different places we had to navigate in Sydney, and a family from the bush was very challenging, that side of things. And I write quite extensively in book 1 is around that experience of the healthcare system for a family in New South Wales at that time. And it has evolved a lot since then. However, at that time, it was definitely not focused around a patient-centred care model. It was very much around, it was up to the patients to get to the services they needed.
Figure it out.
Yeah, and figure it out, which is very challenging when Sydney's a place that you're familiar with.
Yeah, sure. In the book, you talk about Hannah's journey, through, the roller coaster ride of, having the diagnosis, then being cleared, then having, accident. I'm not asking you to tell the whole story. People need to go out and get the book for themselves. But I'm curious for you to share a little bit about Hannah's resilience and her strength that she demonstrated within the within that time that she was going through all of that. We cover a lot on mindset and grit and resilience and how attitude shapes our reality, and I've picked up a lot of that in your book. But I just wanted you to share it from Hannah's perspective. She seems like a very strong young woman, like going through such a challenging ordeal.
And the mindset, and so I'm mother to 3 and a single mum and mother to 3, and have been a horse trainer all my life. And the mindset that emerged in my parenting very much is the model from Training Dogs and Horses, Andrew, at one level. And that is simply that basic tenet that our energy goes where our focus is. So that when we can direct our focus, our energy becomes coherent and aligns with that. And Hannah had that in such a profound way. So her focus, once she, with whatever she applied herself to, and equally with a melanoma diagnosis, at no point did she ever describe being ill or sick. She simply said, I'm not sick, I have cancer. Was her thing, right? I'm not sick, I have melanoma. And her innate trust in her body to, heal was profound. And that helped shape as mum, helped shape my mindset and of Esther and Joe, her brother and sister. So it was very much, we took our lead from Hannah, and her focus always was, what's the next thing I need to focus on that will help me get through this? And so any other information was pushed to the outer. It just didn't take up space in our world. It was around, what's the next thing? What's under our nose now? What do we need to give our attention to? And really focusing on that. So dialing down all the noise, which you could imagine, and especially as a parent, all the other that needed attention at the same time, yet wanting to really give my full attention to Hannah and knowing that she needed us to stay centered, to really be present and centered and grounded with her, which we were. It's very innate in my family that we are a grounded crew. But even more so navigating that year of diagnosis and treatment. It was a really profound year for all of us around staying present, not getting ahead of ourselves, and really very simple life lessons. And one of them I talk about in the book a couple of times is a favourite saying of my dad's, and he was a drover his whole life from the age of 12, and that's, for those that don't know, that's really like shepherding livestock in the open spaces on the stock routes through Victoria and New South Wales. But he just used to say, not to look ahead, like don't shoot, you see the whites of their eyes, which is that absolutely have whatever you're going to give your energy to, have it in your sights before you put anything into it. And that really was our mantra for that year.
It really stood out to me. I've actually got it here underlined. It was a constant challenge to remain in the moment and focus only on what we actually know.
Yeah.
Felt like a million times a day I was telling myself to not shoot until I see the whites of their eyes.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's a powerful lesson. Another one I've got here, a little bit different in feeling and flavor. It says, it felt like we were marinating in death soup being in that ward. And that's a strong visual image that it really hit home to me. And perhaps it ties in with something that you were mentioning before about the way care is delivered, perhaps. But you just felt like that wasn't a healing space to be in. Just can you describe a little bit about that and why you did what you did to address it?
Yeah, so that was the second time. So the second time the melanoma came back, which was August in 2008. And and it was very extensive surgery, and which did require, there was quite incredible, like Hannah lost mobility in her shoulder and neck and from that surgery, but had negotiated with the surgeon, this kind of thing around what is the price I'll pay with the functionality of my body to try and ensure I'm not back here again, which is what she said. I just whatever I need to do to not be here again, I'll do. And which was around, she had to decide to what level of nerves being removed from her shoulder, neck, things like these are decisions as a 19-year-old girl, a 20-year-old girl to make. It's really quite extraordinary. But so after that surgery, she was on IV drips and drainage and all kinds of things for quite a period of time, and in a general women's ward, because she was now not a child anymore, she was 20, and surrounded by much older women, and some of whom were at end of life. And in the room it was a public hospital, but a beautiful woman who was in her 40s was next to Hannah's bed. And each day we'd chat, we're having conversations and that. But one day she had 3 beautiful teenage sons. But one day she died in the bed next to Hannah, this beautiful young mum. Extraordinary. And that was so distressing for us, because Hannah said, "Mum, could that happen to me?" That was the first time that she spoke about death. Could that happen to me? And
so she hadn't really considered it up until that point.
Oh, none of us had at all, zero. And even then we didn't. It was like, this is, and Hannah just said, what else can we do? And I just said, leave it with me, and I spoke to the social worker and all kinds of things, but I just knew we could not stay in that ward, except at that point had to negotiate a lot with the surgeons, etc. There was no other place for her to go because she needed that level of care. However, where I was staying with Hannah and I were staying in Sydney, was with, my sister was there and she's a nurse, and also staying with friends of ours, Adrian and Jeannie, and she was also a midwife and a nurse. So we negotiated that they could do the care. We'd have community nursing coming in every day. So we did that. We were able to get Hannah out of hospital, knowing that that was not a place of healing, that it felt like a place of dying. It was a profound moment. And I spoke at length with the social worker at the hospital. But within 24 hours of that beautiful woman passing away next to Han, we were back at our friend's place and out of hospital, and just knew that that was energetically, and regardless of being told, no, that's not your prognosis, being surrounded by that and the sounds, and I write about this in the book, but how penetrative the sounds, the environment that we're in, the impact that has on us, energetically, Andrew, and not to underestimate that. And in that hospital space where there's so much pain and suffering, that was a very hard space for a young person and her mum to be in.
Yeah. Can you tell us about, you just mentioned energetically, can you tell us about and you do raise this in the book, your understanding of spirit and faith, and you had some profound experiences through this whole journey, and possibly one of the gifts that you would take away from the experience would be these experiences. Can you just tell us about one or more of those spiritual experiences?
So
it's a hard question because
it's in the context of
there's good ones, but then there's also the wrestles that you would have had as well, so perhaps start with some of the tougher ones.
So at no point, and let me say it like this, Andrew, at no point did I feel alone or Hannah feel alone. Yeah. So at no point. And I always, through that whole journey, felt connected to love and all that is good in the world. Yeah. And at no point did Hannah feel separate to that, or did I feel separate to that energy. So even in the darkest of hours in this journey, we still felt connected to love. And that never left us. It never left us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You mentioned having the right energy around for Hannah, and even after Hannah passed away, that became a really important thing for your family. I've read in the book where it was like the 22nd of January, 22nd of December when she passed, and then all of a sudden you had a determination that you did not want her to be, away from you, away from the family, having to wait for holidays and Christmas to go by before you were able to, put her in Mother Earth, as you described it. Just tell us about that. Tell us about that experience, the importance of family, and how that all played out.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, and why I wanted to share in the book, and that's part of it. This is such a deep and rich story, Andrew, and one I know is compelling for other people, because through all the years I did 3 long distance treks in Australia, and connected with communities all over 5 different states of Australia over 5 years. So I know I've told this story in different formats, face to face and through multimedia. And one of the things I know, that we don't talk about what is a good death, and how we support our loved ones when they do die. And in my family, we have had, before Hannah died, we did have, we've had a few funerals where we were able to feel empowered to do things our way. And we really, I don't know where we got the playbook on how to do death, but we seem to know how to do it in my family. And so when I hadn't even thought about, so it's the 22nd of December, a couple of days before Christmas, and Hannah dies in a big city hospital in Victoria. And it's suddenly, oh my God, we need, Hannah's dead, a funeral, like in my mind, I'd been so focused on her living, and we didn't know that she would die until a few days before she did. So that was a shock, was one thing that the deterioration, when her body began to shut down, it shut down very quickly. And while she navigated that, during her dying, she kept reassuring us, and me in particular, I'm going to be okay. Everything's okay. Don't be sad for me. Over and over again, she said this. And then when she did pass away, and I won't talk about that, people can read that story because it is quite profound how she left Earth. And the thing in that is I just knew, every cell in my body knew she was to stay with family, and that until she was in the ground, she was to stay with family. And that beautiful, I remembered in that moment, we had a dear friend here in the Macleay Valley who had passed away and was a close family friend. Another horsewoman had passed away only the year before, and Hannah was close to her and came home for her funeral. Her and I went to Bellbrook for her funeral, and that's a beautiful cemetery in the bush that is surrounded by trees and mountains. And Hannah said to me at that funeral, only less than 12 months before she herself died, she said, Mum, if I die before you, promise me you'll bury me so I can look out at trees. And I said to her, don't be stupid, as if you're going to die before, the rant as a mother. And she said, Mum, listen to me. Like, really, what's up? I dismissed it. But I tell you what, when Hannah died, I remembered that story at Anne's funeral. If I die before you, you make sure to bury me so I can look out at tree. And it was like, oh my God. And so this was Melbourne, and my beautiful nephew had died when he was only 9 in a car accident. He was buried at Gisborne, which is only 45, 50 minutes out of Melbourne. And it is in a beautiful cemetery surrounded by trees. And I was very direct. The funeral director that had managed 2 or 3 of our family funerals, I called her, and I didn't have a dialogue with her. I just spoke to her in a really direct way and said, I need a funeral before Christmas. It needs to be in Gisborne Cemetery. It needs to be looking out at call me back when it's on. She's going, that can never happen. It's 2 days before Christmas. That'll never happen. Blah. And 2 hours later, and seriously, I fell to my knees and prayed my heart out. All of this, that this committing Hannah to the earth, this end of life, that everything we need would come together for that. And I did in there with Hannah. And 2 hours later, a bit over 2 hours later, this beautiful woman rings me back and says, how's 2:30? Mate, then like the rivers of tears, then Andrew was like, awful. And but we were able to take Hannah home to my sister's place, and we cared for her there while we prepared her farewell from earth, which was just beautiful and perfect, and it all amazingly, it all came together. It was a beautiful celebration, and quite extraordinary.
That is amazing. Let me ask you probably an impossible question.
It could be done is the thing, that thing around belief, because there was just no reality for me that didn't line up with Hannah being buried, staying with family, and not being separated from hands and hearts that she loved until she was committed to the earth. It was like that was it. There was just no other reality that was going to. I didn't. It was quite extraordinary.
Amazing. Yeah. Let me ask you what is probably an impossible question, but I'll ask it anyway. And that is, like, on this podcast, we talk about gifts from the edge, and your edge, I guess, has multiple facets to it. We haven't got right into, the social enterprise of Ride for a Cure yet, because I do want to, honor Hannah and Hannah's story in this part of the podcast. But from that season, you know, you hovered on the edge, so to speak, for 12 months. Is it 12 months, maybe even more? You sat in that space, very difficult space to be. And the idea of the edge is that even though we step into wilderness places, that there are gifts that we can take back from that and share with other people. Like, are there ones that jump into your mind that you think are really important and really special that you want to share? I mean, the book obviously is a gift from the edge. Is there anything else?
We can talk ad nauseum about resilience, Andrew, and people do. And the thing in that is that when life gets unsettled, where, you know, we talk about turning, the metaphors around that kind of period in anyone's life where life gets turned upside down, or, you know, turned on its head, or topsy-turvy, or, you know, there's all kinds of things that disruption to life as we know it at a profound level, when it is about life and death. It's not just a discomfort. This is about life and death, and especially as parents. You know, you started at the beginning of this saying about living every parent's worst nightmare. Mate, I heard that a million times. I have heard to this day. You know, it is because, and why we say that, I can't, you know, I can't fathom what it means for you. And of course we can't. We can't until it happens, because we just can't imagine that reality. And yet when it's knocking on the door, it is, the choice is there either to stay in love or not. And the alternative, to go to that place where love isn't, and that continuation of love. So, and this is part of what I write about in the book in a simple, plain English way, is love doesn't die. Love doesn't die. Hannah's no longer physically on earth with us, but the love that she shared is alive and ever present with us that knew her, you know. And while we talk about her, and still do, like Han died 15 years ago, yet she's as alive to us, you know. It's really quite extraordinary. And not just, but other people we've loved, that remembering them and keeping their memory alive through stories and, you know, memories is really, really important for all of us. That yeah. But the gift out of that is knowing that love never dies.
Yeah.
That is the truth, you know. The truth of that in every cell in my being, love doesn't die. You know, love lives on, and the physicality of our existence changes, but love lives on. And I know that through evidence of that reality with Hannah's dying and life since then.
And the beautiful experience, you know, of being able to have that experience, you know, to be able to tell others, you know, encourage others with that truth.
Well, and this is one of the things that why, you know, why I've written this book. I promised people I'd write a book about Ride for a Cure, but to be able to write the story about the treks, I needed to write the story about why, which is what origin story is. It's you know, what are the seeds that took place in me that provoked me, you know, created that momentum to do all of the treks. And it's a story about love. You know, it is a story about loss, but at its core, this is a story about love. It's a story about hope, and it is a story about grit and resilience. And, you know, one of my favorite other sayings is, you know, it's easy to hold the helm when the seas are calm. And that's a famous quote out of a book. And I think, you know, I've got frequent flyer points on rough seas. Not that I'm a sailor, but it is like, you know, never, you know, choppy seas. That's what life felt. But it's that just keeping my eye forward on where we're going. And it is about staying in relationship, you know, staying connected to love, staying, and not toxic positivity. I don't mean it like that, but I mean, in that moment, acknowledging the deep and profound feelings we're having. You know, if we were sad, we were sad. If we're feeling lost, we're feeling lost. but underpinning all of that was a constant sense of love.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that came from Hannah and the experience of companioning Hannah.
Mm.
And she never let sight of that. And even in, her dying breaths, it was all expressions of love.
Mm. Yeah. So tell me about Ride for a Cure. How did you jump from the grief and turmoil that's this one chapter of your life, and then all of a sudden think I'm going to jump on a bike and a horse? Like, how did that happen?
Well, at the time in my life, like, I was working in vocational education for TAFE New South Wales, and throughout that period, and had been for 7 years, running courses in horsemanship and personal development for youth at risk, and had over 300 young people come through programs around personal development and communication, for using horses, equine assisted growth and learning as a conduit for that transformative work. And horses had just played a huge part in my whole life. And when I was with Hannah in hospital, all those times in hospital, all we thought about was, getting back riding horses, training horses, all of that. The reality was, when Hannah died, I couldn't imagine life never riding horses with Hannah again. And in fact, when I finally got home and back to my horses, I was unable to ride. Like, I couldn't saddle a horse. I could feed horses, rug horses, do all that, but I couldn't saddle a horse and ride. And
physically,
so it was,
you mean?
I just couldn't. It took me to a place in my grief that was just beyond. I couldn't. It completely undid me. And Joe, so Esther had left home. She was working in Port Macquarie. This was in the Macleay Valley, and Joe was still at home. He was only 10. And he just said to me one day, "Mum, if you're not ready to ride horses yet, what else can..." And I said, "Well, not ready to ride, what else can we ride?" And he said, "Well, mountain bikes," except we didn't have bikes and all that. So we ended up I bought a couple of mountain bikes, and we started to bang about on them. But before long, we were 14 kilometres from his school, but within a few weeks we were riding into his school.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I made very quickly, was this connection with the pedaling of the bike. While I was on the bike, it was like a meditation. I was just so, mainly because I was so unfit too, and I was like busting a lung. It just kept me focused in the moment. So that riding the bike became a conduit to be separate to my grief. And so I'd ride into the school with Joe. We did that for months, but then I just stayed on the bike and kept riding. And before long, it was like 20 kilometres, 30 kilometres, 40 kilometres, 50 kilometres, riding to Port Macquarie or Southwest Rocks or Bellbrook or Willow. I just, in the book I say I felt like Forrest Gump. I got on the bike and didn't get off. That is the reality, and it just kept expanding out. And before, like, I could just ride anywhere, ride up any hill. Like, it was really, and this was on a very inefficient mountain bike, not one for long distance. So if I wanted to have the worst bike to be doing that on, I had it. But anyway, and it wasn't until I did have a transpersonal. So I'd ridden over. Esther was training horses at Port Macquarie. And Joe used to go on weekends to help her. They'd swim racehorses down at North Shore, and we'd teed up that I'd meet them in the middle of the morning and we'd have brunch together. I said, well, I'm going to ride. So I was living 14 kilometres on the Warren side of Kempsey, out at Aldavilla, the other side of Aldavilla. So I'd ridden all the way to Port Macquarie, out to Lighthouse Beach, which is about 65 k's each way. But so I'm out there. That was fine. And I'm up at Lighthouse Beach, and it's early morning. It was, the sun was up, but it was still that beautiful early morning light. And I've pulled up at the top. I'm a bit breathless because it was a big hill. And I'm there, and I'm just kind of losing myself in the beauty of it. And birds are swooping down, fishing, and lights playing on the water. And I could just feel myself energetically filling up, and this. And then I big wave of grief come through me around missing Hannah, and that she would never physically see, and that's part of that thing, is around never getting moments again, and realizing that with Hannah's humanity, she would never see the sunrise, that beautiful, see the fish and the birds. And I'm there, and And I'm looking at all this and I'm just letting, learned I never held onto my grid. It didn't matter. It was often the most inappropriate spaces where I just have these rivers of tears come through me. And there were some tourists either side of me that were like, because I was like snot crying, but just filled with this incredible energy at the same time. And I simply heard this voice say, "Ride for a cure." And I actually looked around because I thought someone was beside me saying it. And I've looked around and it wasn't. And I heard, "Ride for a cure, ride your bike to Melbourne, ride for a cure." And then the thing about Hannah's two hopes just started to go through, tell all your friends to look after their skin, raise money to find a cure. Those two things were going through, ride for a cure. And it was like, oh my God, I could. It was like the reality of that I'd got fit enough that I could do that. And then the tell all your friends was simply to have these conversations with communities of young people. And it was quite extraordinary how in my mind that all just came together. And
so it began as a meditative kind of experience, some way to detach yourself from grief. There was the added benefit of you getting, fit and healthy along the way. And then you have this moment where you hear this audible voice saying, "Ride for a cure." And then all of a sudden your teacher brain kicks into play, starting to see the sequence, how this could actually happen.
Absolutely. And that was, a few moments in time that happened like that. And then it was this just expansive energy that I felt like all my boundaries were melted, and I felt eternal, limitless love was in every cell in my body. I just felt that. And I knew it just was going to happen.
Yeah.
It truly did. Like, I felt limitless and boundaryless, and it's more than me. This was not just about Maura wanting to do something. This like something moved through me and strengthened me, filled me with the conviction that this could happen, and it did. And
have you felt that continue along the way, along the journey?
Never wavered from that moment. And seriously, from that moment then, and I call it ride for a cure, that clarion call up at Lighthouse Beach. And I love the metaphor of that Lighthouse Beach, a light in the dark for people who are lost, that safe harbor to a shoreline for safety. And that's what it felt like in that sea of relentless not knowing. Here was this was something really beautiful and right. It felt just unwavering in me that was the right thing to do. And I started the inner dialogue then around a trek to Melbourne, like the enormity of something like that. It was like, well, I'm going to need help, the resources I need to come in, and, that kind of thing around, I'll stay focused on getting fit, but in terms of all the rest of it, I need support to make that happen, and for that to happen, and that incredible, and that's what I write in book 2, which I'm writing now. That's that journey of how all that came together, and again, there's a level of effortlessness to all of that, Andrew, that wasn't about me making things happen, and I never stressed. That was the other thing. I did not stress that anything. That I had to make something happen. It was around identifying what was needed. And one of the metaphors I use in the book is around metal filings. And it is that thing around really putting that focus onto something, and then allowing what needs to come, the resources, the energy to come to that, whatever that thing is. And if it's, and I'll be very practical, if it's sponsorship, if it's engagement with schools, it's whatever, it's just getting a clear picture of what I wanted that end result to be, and letting it go. But putting the energy into it, seeing the outcome that I wanted, but not getting into the detail around how I was going to make that happen. It wasn't up to me to make it to happen. It was up to me to show up in the energy needed for that to come to fruition. It wasn't up to me to to force, struggle, make, effort. And I said,
and yet it still all happened. It
did
still
happen.
came to
I mean,
pass.
and I made a lot of phone calls. I had a million conversations with people. I wrote hundreds of letters and emails. So there was effort in that regard, but it felt intuitive and guided, so what is the next thing? When I was unsure of anything, I didn't write lists about possibilities. I went quiet. I went into a silent place and waited for direction.
Yeah,
I didn't think, well, what's my 5 best options and pick the best one.
Yeah.
I go quiet and wait for an inner direction to come to say, try this, do this.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
Extraordinary things happened around how all the sponsorship, like almost unbelievable, because they were just so in some ways like magical, Andrew. And unexpected and but again following intuition. And I'll just share it in as an example of just one small thing I'm writing about in book 2. We had a sponsorship with the Australian Motorhome Group and to provide a Winnebago, and that was for the first trek, and that was from Kempsey to Melbourne. And we had all that teed up and we had TV shoots already planned for Newcastle, all this stuff when I rode the bike through. However, all this fell through just a few weeks out from the commencement of the trek.
Oh, no.
Right, there's the transport for me and the crew, so I'm on the bike the whole time, but the Winnebago was for the road crew support, all that stuff. And it falls through, and that was because 2009 the global financial crisis hit, and the company had to withdraw. And the beautiful CEO that rang me up, he was devastated because we'd already negotiated all this media and blah. And I said to him, what I've learned in this process is everything works out. Everything keeps working out. So even though this feels like a setback, it's not. I trust that something else is going to emerge. And a few days after that, Andrew, and again, I'm 65 kilometres from Port Macquarie, but I just get this message, ride your bike to Port. So I just get on my bike. That's all I got to do, get on my bike, listen to that voice, ride to Port Macquarie. And I'm going down Hastings River Drive. And I barely even noticed it, but next second, it's like the bike and I go into Watson's Caravans. I go in there and I thought, oh, here we go. And I just walked over.
How did I get hit?
Like no plan or anything. And I've walked into the office and I said, could I speak to the manager? And he's a beautiful young man, Dean Watkins. He said, he's not here today, but how can I help you? And I told him what I was after. He took down my name and phone number and he said, we'll get back to you. That was it. So got on my bike and rode home again. That was it. But in the morning, at 7 o'clock in the morning, Andrew, I get a phone call, and it's Kenny Watson from Watson Caravans. And he says, what do you want me to ride on the caravan?
No.
Seriously. And I said, I'm coming to Port Macquarie. I got in my ute and drove to Port Macquarie. But I said to him, mate, what enabled you to say yes like that? And no, I'm now looking at him face to face. And he said, my best mate's daughter has just been diagnosed with melanoma. And he said, and it shocked them. Like no one in there was exactly the same story I had. And he said, and that was very recent. And he said, seems like no bastard's doing anything about this. You seem like a kick-ass kind of woman. So get out there and do whatever it is you're going to do.
Oh, wow.
They sponsored us with a beautiful new Jayco caravan, did all the wiring on the, did all the sign writing, like everything, Andrew. And that was
amazing.
Ride your bike to Port Macquarie. That wasn't about, well, I've got to, any woo-woo or anything. It was that simple voice saying, do this. If that, lessons from the edge, if the one takeaway out of this podcast is for people is listen to the small voice. Listen to the small voice and take action. So, these big things like a huge amount happened in Ride for a Cure over those years. However, it didn't happen all at once. It happened one small direction at a time, small invitation at a time. Do this, do that.
Yeah.
action.
That is a gift. That is powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the process of it all, you were voted in 2012 Social Entrepreneur of the Year. Is that right?
Well, there's a little funny story attached to that, because I didn't know what I'd been doing for 7 years or 5 years at that point. So was setting up a social enterprise until someone said to me, "Oh, you should apply to study with the social entrepreneurs." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because everything you're doing is social enterprise." I said, "I don't even know what a social enterprise is." And she said, "Everything you're doing is a social enterprise." So, and I did
that social enterprise.
all that's what you're doing. That is a social enterprise. And it is about doing good, creating impact in a region through social action. And I'd never really even thought about it. Like I was, just simply felt like this journey I was on. And but we raised a lot of money, connected with a lot of people, and significant change happened in rural and remote areas because of it. And I was very fortunate to win a scholarship with the School of Social Entrepreneurs in 2012. And I can't remember the exact number of people that were in the program that year, but I think around 3 dozen, 30 people maybe. And I was voted by, and they were incredible. The people that went through that were the caliber of people, Who Gives a Crap, the toilet paper people, Ozfood, like really big social enterprises that are globally well known now, and international social enterprises as well. But so Ride for a Cure was voted Social Entrepreneur of the Year that year, 2012.
Wow.
So it was just so incredible that those people that I journeyed with for 12 months recognized that in what I'd been doing.
That's really special. And as you say, just by following that small voice and putting one foot in front of the other, just taking the steps. That's really good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned book two. Book 2 is on its way. When can we expect to see this?
Christmas time. So I'm on a Christmas time. Yeah, it's called Ride for a Cure, One White Post at a Time. And it does cover. So it picks up where book 1 ends, which is the creation of Ride for a Cure. And then it does cover, so the 3 long distance treks plus, which is 1 bike trek and 2 horse treks. And I did, I was halfway down to Melbourne on the bike trek, and I knew I had an amazing experience on the bike, and I knew I was going to be right to ride horses again, which was just phenomenal. That was riding up Heartbreak Hill at Gundagai. I got that. But yeah, so book 2 is about that, but it's the stories that the humanity of the stories that sit within the Ride for a Cure story. So I'm really excited about writing this book at the moment, but it's called One White Post at a Time. And the metaphor in that is very simply that, how did you ever do that? And I didn't ride through, I just rode, it was always about one more turn of the pedal, ride it was to the next white post. So it was always, again, small incremental steps. It wasn't, which did get me to Melbourne and Perth. So it's not, it really is about the small steps, and it creates massive change.
Is that how you do your writing process as well? One
so
white post at a time?
1,000% it is. My time is my best friend, so I still work full time. I'm a volunteer a lot in community. I'm engaged in a lot of different things in community. So, and how the book got written last year was pretty funny, actually, because I had a moment where I just felt really content with life, and I'd done everything. If I died today, I'd be happy. I've done everything. And then I heard this inner voice go, "You didn't write the book." Expletive there. "You didn't write the book, Maura." It's like, oh my God, I didn't write the book. And because I'd kept a blog and the whole Ride for a Cure journey for 5 years, so people said, "You need to write a book," and I said, "Oh, I will one day." And that was it. And I really, then that commitment I'd made to all those hundreds of people about the book, I was like, oh my God, I have to do that. And then it was like, how do I make it? Because I just thought, oh, where am I ever going to find the time to do that? That was the first thing. And then it was like, make a way out of no way,
30
minutes a day, find 30 minutes. So that was 4:30 in the morning, get up, because my working day starts at 5:36. So it's like getting ready to, so it was like, just start with 30 minutes a day. But I set a deadline of 3 months that I had to have a first draft by 3 months. And interestingly, as a creator, so again, thinking about, well, how am I going to do this? It was, and again, the beautiful Brene Brown that wrote Eat, Pray, Love, that English, Elizabeth Gilbert, sorry, not Brene Brown. And she said, it's not the creative's job to judge, it's the creative's job to do. And I'm just going to keep like writing, bored with writing.
Yeah.
So it's not about looking back. I'm not going to edit the first draft at all until I get to the end of it. So it wasn't about, I just didn't reread anything, Andrew. And every day though, before I started with 30 minutes a day, in my mind and my energy was feeling the energy of the writer, feeling the energy of the stories that wanted to be told. So when I sat at my computer, the stories were ready.
Yeah.
And I charted out. I did do the mud map of 20 chapters. I started with 20 chapters.
Yeah.
And that was the mud map I had. I had 20 chapters for the book and wrote the stories. And really, some that I thought I was going to write, I didn't write. Others that needed to be told ended up in the book. And
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's gold there, just to find 30 minutes in the day. Like, I think for people listening, if there's a thing that you feel that you're called to do, you felt the stirring inside that's on your horizon and you need to get to it, but you're feeling like, I'm not sure how I can do this. It's too big. It's too overwhelming. That advice right there, find 30 minutes a day, I think is a fantastic place to start, because I think that's really achievable for most of us, isn't it?
Yeah, and using something like the timer is my best friend. So my 30 minutes, I set a timer. So no matter what point I was up to at the 30 minutes, I'd stop.
Yeah.
I stopped. Even if I was on a roll and I felt, I'm in such a stop.
Yeah.
Go outside, go for a walk, make a cup of tea,
and
honor that time. And then what happened around that was it just that whatever creative time I had at the computer, mate, in the end, in an hour, I was writing 3,600 words, could really it built the momentum around that creative energy coming through, because bookending the time was just as critical as making the time. So honor the time that you set to do the job. Using the same methodology this time around. And the thing, what I'd say to people is that question about what would you not want to, if you were to leave Earth tomorrow, God forbid, what would you want to make sure you had done? Like, is there something that's left? And if there is, if that's going to be something that you'll regret, is absolutely make time to do it.
Get onto it.
Yeah.
Maura, I feel like I could continue to talk to you all evening. We're out of time, but I would love to get you back after Christmas when the next book comes out, if that's a possibility. I know you'll be busy, but we're really looking forward to that. Where can people go to either get their copy of the first book or find out more about the upcoming book?
So my website is simply my name, mauraluxford.com.au, and that's mauraluxford.com.au. And you can go there and you can purchase a book online there and find out more about the Ride for a Cure story.
Perfect. Thank you so much. As I've said, I'm right near the end of mine and, loving it, completely immersed in it. I can highly recommend it to you guys. So make sure you go and check that out. I'm going to put a link just below so you can find that very, very easily. Maura, thank you so much for spending some time with us today here on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Andrew.
And there you have it, Maura Luxford and her amazing, moving story of the life and then the heartbreaking passing of Hannah. Beautiful Hannah. But we got a sneak peek of her upcoming book, and she kept dropping nuggets of wisdom and insight for us there. So I hope you picked those up. And if not, maybe go back and listen again, but I'll leave you with a few right now. First one is, stay focused on what's in front of you right now. Don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes, as Maura's dad would say. But of course, that means don't be distracted by what's not real, not in front of you. So much of what we battle with in life is just the fears that we've made up in our mind. And one of Maura's gifts from the Edge is her laser-like focus. Another one of her nuggets that actually challenged me when I heard it was, when you're not sure what to do, don't write a list of best options and choose one of them. But she said, sit still, get quiet, and wait for that inner direction. And Maura said, if there's one takeaway from this podcast, it will be to listen to that small, still voice and then do. Once you've got it, take action. Such good stuff. Now, I've put a link just below if you're on the blog page, so you can go and find Maura's book and get your copy. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. And if you're listening to this on the 1st of July, the day that it's released on the blog, you'll also be able to get a free ticket to come along to our Passion to Profit micro business launch with TAFE, where Maura will be doing a short welcome to all the students and the guests, and she's giving away a free copy of her book as a lucky door prize as well. So if you can, this Thursday, come along, have lunch with me, have lunch with Maura, meet some of my amazing clients doing awesome things in their businesses. And if you want to find out more about how you can be one of my clients, fully funded through TAFE New South Wales, then I've put a link below where you can click on that and check that out as well. All right, that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us again. I hope to connect with you very soon. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, so we never miss each other. But that's all for now. Bye for now.